And now we're back live here at the studio with one of the last panel sessions actually of the day, but of a subject that I'm extremely passionate about, so the why behind Nordic Impact. We have an amazing array of doers, change makers joining us, and the session will be moderated by Dr. Tarek Omran. And Tarek, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can, loud and clear, Ronnie.
Perfect. So I'll let you get started with the session. You all are being seen nicely, and I can hear you all. So the floor is yours, Tarek. Let's start.
Thank you so much, Ronnie. I am super excited to be here, and happy Nordic Day, everybody. Now, we have a lot of awesome people, and I'm just super excited because some of the things that I do is study speakers. I like to study speakers and know what are the great things that they do in their speeches, and then later on, actually give communication courses in my company called Science Pictures. If you wonder why science, is because I'm a little bit of a nerd myself. I did a PhD in dentistry, so I looked a lot into what goes into people's mouths, but also what comes out of it. And what I saw with our speakers today is that what was coming out of it wasn't just words, but it was a lot of action. So allow me to welcome our three panelists. I'll introduce all three of them today very shortly, and then we'll ask them a bit more about their story so that we can actually get up and close and personal with them. And then we'll ask the question of the day, which is why Nordic Impact? Something that we're all very fond of, and we know that the Nordics is on top of the list. So why are we doing this? And finally, we'll get also a little bit personal with a discussion session with our panelists. So please feel free to shoot your questions right away in the comment section right below somewhere. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first panelist, Amanda Sundell. I have to give a little disclaimer. I'm going beyond your LinkedIn CV. Everybody is Googling you right now and checking you out. But if you guys know that Amanda, she actually had we would say a little startup that became huge and actually got acquired by another business. But I think the caveat here, and that was very interesting, is that one of the things that she wanted to do is to make as much profit as she can, not to buy a yacht, not to just cruise around the world, but to give it to the Baltic Sea, to actually give it to impact, to give back to the society. Imagine somebody saying, I want to be a billionaire to help a billion people. I think this summarizes what Amanda Sundell is, apart from the other great things that she does. Nowadays, she's working in Ashoka and she's the country manager in Finland. And what she's doing is actually, she's helping again, social entrepreneurship and providing better systems for a better sustainable future for all of us. And I think that's the best thing, is that she's actually trying to help other people as well. One good thing is that currently she's doing a change maker mapping. I think this is quite fascinating that you know where change makers are, like with a beautiful map. So maybe she can tell us a little bit more about that. The second panelist of the day, I'll have Conrad, as he's on my right side. So Conrad is actually all the way from Sweden. Well, again, it's a beautiful Nordic event, and you can see that we're not really far away from one another. Now, Conrad, on the other hand, is a person who's learning a lot. He's always absorbing. When I had discussions with him before our panel day, and I was like, so tell me a bit about you. And he right away just turned the tables on me. He was like, no, I want to learn about you, Tarek. I was like, oh my God, that's why, of course. I mean, being a journalist, getting to sit with amazing people, you're always in that mood of learning and listening. I think this is his story, starting ever since he was 17 years old. Now, he is at the moment the editor in chief of Scandinavian Mind. And the beautiful thing about it is that he had great experience also in IT and in fashion and in culture. And he was saying how like we need to combine both. You don't just make great technology without making it human centered. And you don't just do things for humanity without using some technology to make it better. So there's definitely a lot of scopes. Conrad, I hope I did not sell you short. There's tons of things that I want to ask you during this panel discussion, but just a brief introduction about what Conrad is doing. And the final panelist of today is Arto. Arto is hands down a community builder. He literally does things from the ground up. He does Like he learns by doing, literally, to the point that we were once discussing about educating at Aalto University, one of the top universities here in Finland. And he said, believe it or not, I didn't even get my high school certificate. Was it high school? What? Not even university? He's like, no, 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 I went beyond that. He's been working, in the creative industry for over 20 years. He has tons of experience, and he didn't take the normal route. And believe it or not, that's something you can definitely do in the Nordics. So I think he's a great example of what you can actually do. At the moment, he's leading Mondag, which means Monday in Swedish, and it's a creative, again, industry, and they help basically businesses with a sustainable future go even further. So thank you so much, Arto, for being with us, and thank you, Amanda, and thank you, Conrad. So to begin, I'd like to open a question to all of you, and that is, why did you choose Nordic Impact? Maybe we can start with Amanda.
Why did I choose Nordic Impact? I think I chose impact in general. So without borders, I think we have a lot of great things to be proud of in the North, all of the Nordic countries. But I think at the same time, a lot of the challenges and the questions all of us here want to address are global or at least international. So I think we can start here in the Nordics, but I think we're all super committed and interested in finding solution to international issues.
That is excellent, and thank you for making that little adjustment. It's not Nordic; it's actually global. It's for all humans, regardless. Thank you, Amanda. How about Conrad? Why choose impact?
It's a good question, and just before I answer that, just thank you for having me, and thank you for organizing this beautiful event. I come from the worlds of fashion and lifestyle and design. I've spent my entire career doing these sort of traditional lifestyle magazines. 4 years ago, I ventured out on my own, started my own business, choosing the name Scandinavian Man. It was called Scandinavian Man before we changed it to Mind a year ago. I think for us, it coming from the angle of fashion, there's always obviously an aesthetic part of it. There's a certain type of design sensibility that we have in the Nordics that is really renowned worldwide. But moving beyond that, I think it's more about sort of intrinsic Scandinavian or Nordic values. And just by the way, I don't put any difference between Nordics and the Scandinavian. We cover the entire Nordics in our platform. But I think just in terms of the world, what we've noticed, having worked internationally, is that the Nordics, it's just very positively received by the world. I don't think I've ever gone anywhere where I've sort of have had a negative experience or been treated negatively because of where I'm coming from. And I think it's because there are just the proof is in the pudding in a way. There's so much coming out of the Nordics that have influenced the world, that people really are expecting great things when you come. So I think whatever you do, it's a great starting point in a way. And from a branding perspective, it's just like, we wanted to use the word Scandinavia because we got so much for free in a way. We didn't invent this. We didn't invent these values of equality or democracy or innovation or in all these things. We all have them together. There are our common asset in a way. But in terms of branding, when I advise brands from any field, I advise them to include something about their heritage, city they come from, or country. Anything Nordic will intrinsically give a positive reaction to the receiver globally. That's what I think.
Perfect, thank you. And I think this is a very important point, is that we're actually taking something that is universal, and at the same time we're kind of giving it forward. I think this is quite interesting, your take on it. And I would like to ask you a few more questions a bit afterwards. We'll have Arto now answer the same question. I want to get back to you on this one. Thank you, Conrad. Arto,
The question
the
is
same
like, why
question goes to
Nordic
you.
and why Impact? I think
Exactly.
I could follow Amanda on this. I didn't choose Nordic. I was born here, so I have no choice. But like later on, of course, when I was born, when I was a teenager, when I was a young adult in advertising, I didn't really realize anything. I mean, I was just this is normal to everyone. But I think last few years we've been kind of learning in all Nordic countries that this is actually something pretty special what we are having here. So I think we are in this learning process, everyone here. And I think why Impact? I think these value-driven lifestyles or ideas or thoughts are basically coming from our childhood and our families, and where the values comes from basically. And then maybe later on you will learn the tools how to use those values. I learned my tools in creative industry, in marketing agencies, advertising agencies in different countries. And I kind of did everything, whatever for money, like advertisers do. But the tools are pretty good because I think they're super powerful tools to do whatever, but I just wanted to use the tools for better purposes. So here I am nowadays, and I'm trying to use those tools in a better way. In this, another thing about this Nordics, I think we still need to learn a lot. I think, as Conrad mentioned, there are a lot of really interesting points and interesting learnings from the Nordics, but everywhere in the world are actually watching us right now. But I think we need to watch back. We need to learn back. There are a lot of things where how we could improve, how we can be better. And well, I'm not making a list here, but I think it's kind of two-way process here. And I think also Nordics could improve still.
That's a really humble way to look at it. And this is actually ties into the thing that I was holding myself off from telling Conrad or asking Conrad is the whole identity that we have, but at the same time, we're open to get a lot more from collaborating. Speaking of collaborating, I want to ask Amanda, have you met Conrad before?
No, I have not met Conrad.
Nice to
And that's
meet
quite
you.
interesting. and we're happy to bring amazing minds together, Nordic minds together, because one of the things that we have been also looking at, and maybe I'll take that off Arto's list, is that community, that we're all here together, and the community that makes it much faster for all the change makers, especially the ones you're highlighting, Amanda, and you're actually mapping out, but to actually get them much closer together. I will say something, as I came here 6 years ago to the Nordic region, I realized that the hierarchy non-existence in a way gets us so much closer and fast. And when we have that environment, we can actually propel ourselves much forward. And that brings me to the second question. I can ask it. I'll start with Amanda once again. Amanda, where are you now heading with what you know into the future?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think, of course, as you mentioned at the beginning, I have the background of a social entrepreneur, so I had my own social business that I was driving here in Finland, and now I'm working with Ashoka, which is the world's largest network of social entrepreneurs. So what we try to do is exactly connect social entrepreneurs, the people who want to learn from them, the people who want to support them, both here in the Nordics, but also globally. Ashoka has selected these social entrepreneurs from 93 countries. So there are more than 3,800 social entrepreneurs in our network, and we have offices in around 40 countries. So I think where I'm heading right now is that I really want to strengthen the ecosystem. This is such sort of, NGO language and lingo, but what we really want to do with Ashoka, and what I'm very passionate about as well, is to support the social entrepreneurs who are active here in Finland and in the Nordics, to create even more social impact. And I want to go back to what Arto said, because he said that he started out in advertising in the for-profit space, and then he realized he can use these tools in better ways. And that's exactly what a lot of social entrepreneurs do. and what we want to encourage people to do, to use, some of the good tools from the traditional entrepreneurial space, and put them to use in a sort of socially minded way. And by social, I mean, in the broad sense, like when we talk about impact, it can be related to equity, environmental justice, the range of themes is broad. So I think that's where I'm heading, just trying to sort of lift up all these super promising social entrepreneurs in Finland and in other countries in the Nordics, and see what can come out of that, because I think amazing things can come out of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Amazing things can come out of that. And when you were talking about the offices that Ashoka has all around the world, I'm like, yeah, there's one in Cairo too. I know it's close to where I live. So this is really nice that the Nordics are even going beyond the Nordics. Thank you, Amanda, for this. How about Conrad?
Well, I think this idea of sort of collaboration and convergence is really, the way to approach things right now. And my realization coming from the worlds of fashion and design and so forth, these are huge industries with an enormous impact negatively on environment, for instance, but at the same time they're sort of culturally driven industries that sort of have great reach and engage a lot of people. So what I'm seeing is, and this is where I think the Nordics can play a real part, because of what you said, the sort of flat organization, we're closer to each other, there's perhaps shorter distances to collaborate cross industry, which I think you really need to do. But my realization was that in order for the world of fashion to move forward to something else, to go beyond this sort of be based on an industry that's really negatively impacting the environment. I think we're at globally, is it like 150 billion garments produced every year. Only 1% of that is recycled. A third of that doesn't even touch the consumer. It just sits there on warehouses and storefronts and so forth. So it's like the huge challenges. But and what I saw was that we can only tackle this, we can only handle this issue if we infuse this problem with technology and innovation, but it needs to happen from other sectors, right? So it needs to come in from other parts of it, because the industry itself will not necessarily transform itself in a natural way. The incentives are not there. But I do think it's ripe for disruption, and I think it's going to be because of cross collaboration with different types of industries. And I think the Nordics, coming back to that, with its heritage of telecommunication and the forest industry, and there's a lot of stuff happening in other industries in terms of recycling and developing new materials and so forth, that will able to start a transformation in the fashion industry. There's just one example, but I think the word collaboration is key here.
The word collaboration is key, and the word disruptive is another key, Conrad. Thank you, because this is something so beautiful to hear somebody talking about. Most people in business, they talk about, okay, there's a market gap, I could do a better product. But here we're talking about, listen, there's an impact gap and we can make things better. This is fantastic. I didn't know about the fashion industry and how much we're producing and how little we are recycling, but that's a gap right there, and we can actually do things a lot better. So thank you so much, Conrad, for disrupting the fashion industry.
I'm not doing it myself, but I try to do my small part of communicating around it, and like you guys, bringing people together and talk about it.
Exactly. It all starts with talking and follows doing right away. Thank you, Conrad. How about Arto?
A tough question. Is pretty
yes, good. That's why we're here.
That's what I don't want to know where I'm actually going to be after 5 years. If I would know that, I would be really depressed, I think, because I like that things are changing fast and I need to react fast. It means that I need to learn a lot all the time. I think that's the main thing. Like, as Conrad have set into your first meeting, like learning is the key. I think this also like my biggest passion is learning everywhere, all the time, with the people, sometimes by myself, and just doing things. You're learning by doing. That's I think once I finish learning, I can give up. I mean, that's about it then. I think one thing what really matters to me, and I think what I'm pretty good at, I think is I can connect the dots. I can connect people and institutions, and I think that's super crucial question. Like, for example, in the future, I would love to do that even more. Like how to connect the private sector and public sector together, how to connect ministries and corporations, NGOs and different individuals, because there are a lot of knowledge in certain boxes, and people don't have a common language. They don't know the expertise that they're having. So I think that's the key issue: how to bring knowledge together, how to bring ideas together and people together, and from different cultures, from different worlds. I think that's the key. And then another thing, I think what is really important, and I can't do that by myself, like Conrad has not changed the fashion industry either, is how it can be sustainable, like how everyone can be sustainable, because now this kind of sustainable lifestyles is made for like wealthy people, like we are. We are in a good position in this world. We have work, probably we have pretty safe life. We have clean water there. We have, I mean, we're drinking tap water here and happily smiling. And I think that's something what really matters now, how we can scale everything, how we can change the system in a way like everyone gonna have a possibility to change the lifestyle and live in a better way. I think most of the people probably would love to do that, but it's just impossible to do now. So in marketing perspective and strategy, what we do is something what we can help at least into these processes, and also we can help institutions and where or EU or government or institutions to understand how also the market works and how corporations works and how marketing works and how money functions. So I think we are the middleman there and matchmakers there, and maybe the goal is like we can try to help as many people as possible.
That is such a good point. We are the middleman. And I want to ask you all, actually, because you are having a lot of experience in this, but what are the challenges that you're facing right now reaching that goal? What do you think, Amanda?
I don't know challenges, but if we talk about needs, I mean, I'm obviously working with social entrepreneurs and change makers, constantly thinking about, okay, how can we support them to sort of have even better chances at growing their impact, which often means like developing their social innovations, finding partners who they can further develop these social innovations with. And what I see, I mean, you mentioned the changemaker mapping. So we've done this sort of research here in Finland. Like, what is it that social entrepreneurs and changemakers are really after here? And what we found was that people want even more and stronger networks. So especially sort of cross-sectoral collaboration. So that's clearly a need and something I want to work for. Yes. So what we've all been talking about, really bringing people together. And I think one of the keys there is also what Arto mentioned. How do we bring government and the public sector together with these innovator types and people with bold and disruptive ideas? And how do we create an environment where we can actually take some of those, risk-taking and also disruptive ideas and bring them into, to become sort of part of policy and become part of the, maybe what the public sector has to offer. So that's one thing, is networks and collaboration. Also funding, of course. I mean, funding is always a challenge for, entrepreneurs who are starting out and also social entrepreneurs. So how can we, raise awareness on this issue and find people who have the means to support also financially and who are interested in these issues, but might not be aware of social entrepreneurs and of change making and so also it's again down to connections, but also just concretely how can we create funding. So that's something I'm I'm focusing on. And then awareness as well. Like we need to become better at talking about the potential of social entrepreneurs and change makers, so that society more broadly and the sort of general audience starts to see the valuable contribution that these people and organizations can bring. So those are a few of the things that we're focusing on.
3 points, actually. Very good 3 points. As a matter of fact, I think it's much better than my next question because it's actually aligned with the audience's. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna bounce the next question to Conrad. It's a bit of a hot potato, but it ties into what Amanda was asking, what was saying. And the question goes like, so how, and it might be a skeptical question, but how does the impact that we're doing here, the Nordics, help us in the future solve bigger problems?
It's a huge question in a way. I don't know. I think going back to the word entrepreneurship, and I think one of the words that I'm trying to infuse in all my discussion is sort of revenue streams and profitability. I think, when we talk about change making and doing things for the better, let's not shy away from the fact that we need to create systems and new sort of business models that actually are sustainable in themselves. So, in the world of fashion, I come back to this because I have this perspective, but I think it applies to other industries as well, that, you can take the issue of sustainability, the sort of global harm to the environment, and you can applaud new small initiatives and brands that are doing excellent things, that are sort of 3 or 4 people and growing to maybe 25 employees. That's all great and good, and we need sort of new innovators. But I think problems need to, as you just pointed out, be solved at scale. I think we are in a good position in the Nordics. Certainly from the Swedish perspective, we have some of the biggest companies both within fashion and furniture, for instance. I think a lot of problems need to happen on that scale. I think what I'm trying to learn more about in sort of the tech space, and that's why I'm getting more and more curious about Finland and Helsinki and what's going on there, is some of these innovations and sort of technical solutions that come out of the Nordics. It has a huge global impact, and I'm really curious how to piggyback sort of new business models, new ways of thinking onto the scale that we have with our biggest sort of biggest companies and biggest innovations. But we can take just a super simple example as Spotify, one of the biggest sort of audio companies in the world now. It came out of Sweden like a decade ago, but they're just the sort of the parental laws that they, or parental sort of what do you call it in English? No, it's not regulations, because in the Nordics it is. We have sort of rights, right? We have the right to have parental leave. You don't have that in the States, but they add that to the benefits of the paycheck. So that's just one sort of tiny example of how a sort of a Nordic a value system can impact the world because of greater scale to the actual company. So that's my 2 cents on that one.
Thank you so much, Conrad. And exactly, and people can be like, oh wait, I can do that too in my company.
Yeah,
I can just carry it forward, especially if it's sustainable. Now, speaking of that and piggybacking, it also ties in with our next question from the audience, which is, how could we bring more collaborations to happen? How can we bring great people like you to work together? What do you think, Arto?
Good question. I think a few things. First, you need to know who you are, and you need to know who we are looking for. I think that's the key. Because I remember, like, when I started my business life, in those years, everyone said that give business card to everyone's pocket. I mean, it doesn't work. You don't need to meet everyone. You need to meet the right ones. Try to meet the right ones. You don't have time in this lifetime to meet everyone. And I think, so you need to know what you want. And then probably the right ones are the ones who share the values with you. And it doesn't matter what the professional background is. You just need to share everything. Your kind of personal values should be the same as your business values. I think once you find those guys, you will be succeeded. I think that's really important. And I think what is when you build networks, what is so important at the end of the day is the trust. You can trust someone, and you can find the trust, and it doesn't matter where this person comes from. But that takes time, and I think that's also like the one of the biggest questions of our times. Who do you believe? In media, in different kind of movements, actions, in politics. And I think this is the major question for every one of us. Who do you trust and what to believe and where to find the right facts in a way? And that's also connected to this networking thing and how to build your teams. But I think at the end of the day, I would love to think, and I believe in good. And first time if I meet someone like Conrad and Tarek, we have met once, and Amanda I know more well. But I believe like all guys who I meet first is okay, they are good guys, and if I can find some alternative information, then I can change my mind. But I think that's the way how we should live. We need to believe good and good people, because people are basically good always. We are hearing alternative stories every time, but I think that's my kind of method of networking.
Excuse me, Conrad, were you, sorry, Arto, were you still speaking? Because it suddenly cut.
Sorry, I'm just closed my mic because my dog is pretty noisy here, so I'm saving your ears.
Can I just react on that a little bit? And
Yes.
I agree to all that Arto say, and I think sort of a gut reaction is you know, from a networking perspective, it's really true what you're saying. It's just one thing I would add, and something I try to infuse is sort of also try to work with people that don't share your values, and try to find ways to, because I think one of the problems we have is the sort of increased polarization. And if we, you know, I think especially in the Nordics, we're all sort of innovative people working with change and progression. And it's easy to become sort of be wrapped in a bubble with like-minded people who wants to do the same thing. And I think, you know, I have a family in the States, and I try to look at things from the sort of the challenging position of their sort of increased polarization. And I think one thing that we really need is just sort of more collaboration with not like-minded people, but people who think really, really different. And that's, I know it's hard, and I'm not saying I do it well, but it's one of those perspectives I try to remind myself of.
Shortly comment, I totally agree with you on this. It's just kind of, I think it's a bit different if you start to work with someone, or if you want to test or try to understand someone's opinions. You don't need to agree with people, even if you're working with them. I think that's kind of the case, and it's the case of polarization at the same time. Like we put people in the different boxes, like, and who you are, where you're from, what is like a background is, and before we know the human being. So we all do this too often, I think, and I totally agree with you. We should do that more often. But then I think if you start to run a business, for example, with someone, probably you should have some kind of life goals with the same direction. And then you have a possibility to kind of share the values and go to the same direction. But then we need to understand the differences and why these people should believe what we are saying, or why they don't believe what we are saying.
That's definitely well said. And I think it ties in, Conrad, when we were speaking earlier, and I told you, sticking in the same group for a very long time makes you end up seeing only one truth and how to see the world. And Conrad liked this saying, and I told him a wise man said it. His name was Arto Sivonen. So this is definitely something that we can use. Like, okay, getting people with different perspectives, but at the same time, instead of going and making kind of networking and making connections and throwing business cards, actually making friends from different backgrounds and different values. But when it becomes that true friendship, I think businesses can thrive for sure. Now, with that being said, we are reaching the end of this amazing panel. We had all the questions answered, luckily, and we had a final question, which is, what do you love about the Nordics? And in a nutshell, like in just like a few seconds or let's say a minute each, I would like to ask all of you to answer that question. What do you love about the Nordics, Amanda?
I love transparency. I love that we're actually a very transparent society. I think that's something that's it sort of forms a basis for a lot of the things we've been talking about here. Democracy, education, innovation, transparency can be linked to those, and the open access to information that allows us to develop innovations. So that's something that's really important to me. But then also the equality, or I don't think we're perfect in that sense, but I think we have a very good starting point, sort of equality of opportunity. So that's something that I want to highlight as well. And just going back super briefly to the networking discussion as well, I think equality is something that we need to keep in mind as well. So it's fantastic that we can have these spontaneous sort of exchanges and meet people, but we also need to think about, okay, how can we bring in people that don't have that social capital? How can we bring in them in the network and do more there? Because I think that's a super important question. And otherwise, even if we're sort of disagreeing, we're still in a very similar space with relatively similar people who share a few things in their background in common, and often that's related to education or position or things like this. So that's just something I wanted to bring in. But yeah, I'm going to go with transparency and equality.
Excellent points that you raised there, and having that kind of similar safe space, but definitely transparency and equality. I think these are some of the things that made me come to the Nordics to begin with. So thank you, Amanda, for sharing this. How about Conrad?
My gut reaction to that question, what do I love about the Nordics, is nature. That's the first thing that popped up. I just
Nice.
I love every part of it. I love the mountains, the water, the northern lights, and all that. It's become increasingly more and more important. But one other thing that becomes more and more important as I grow older, I think 10 years ago I would say like we're in a great position in the world, and we have this good sense of trends, and we can really develop things. But I think, and perhaps jumping off of what Amanda said, but I think just safety is one of the words that I think a lot about these days, and I think perhaps it's because I do have family in the States. I watch closely what's happening there. There's the myth about America is that it's a land of opportunity, and I think it is for a certain group of people. But I think Scandinavia or the Nordics really is the area of the lands of opportunity, because we have a safety net that's unique in the world, and it ties into the equality part, ties into the transparency part, it ties into democracy. But I'm surprised by myself that I've thought about this word a lot lately, safety, and I guess that's super important.
Absolutely, it's our most fundamental need on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, this is what we actually want to start with.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much, Conrad. And I do agree with you. Nature, oh my God, this is definitely something to think about, and something that we connect back to our roots, if I can say that. Thank you so much, Conrad. And Arto? That's for last, and usually last person. I have to say something, Arto, as a disclaimer. I understand this in panelists. When he's the last, he has to kind of cross things off his list, because like, oh, I wanted to say nature. Oh, I wanted to say safety and trust. Oh. So sorry, Arto.
Exactly what happened, because Amanda mentioned so many things, and then I thought, okay, safety is my key, but Conrad was mentioning it. But I think what is related on the safetyness is trust, and I think if you're here, you can basically trust people, almost everyone. So I think it's connected to the safetyness. I love this. and people are pretty direct. If they mean something, they will say it. At least in Finland. In Sweden, it's more complicated. You are too nice. We are not so nice. And so whatever we say sounds pretty rude to Swedes, but we in here you're getting used to it. Maybe Tarek, you know this already pretty well. They don't talk at all. But I think also what I love in Nordic countries are differences, because we have differences, and that's super funny. And we all have these jokes about Swedes and Norwegians and Danish and even Finns. So I think also that's nice. And I think we should have if next Nordic Days will come, maybe you could have some kind of event for the Nordic joking, and kind of we can find funny points of different nationalities here and share it to everyone.
Oh, we can definitely do that. Definitely do that. Thank you so much, Arto. And as a matter of fact, we can already ask Ronnie, what does he think about having in the next Nordic Day an actual segment for jokes?
I love the idea, to be honest. I've enjoyed your session so much. I also wanted Tarek actually to ask you, what do you love about the Nordics? Because you haven't had a say here yet.
Oh, you put me on the spot. Wait, can I say trust? No. Can I say transparency? No. Can I say all of the above? Because it's a place where, okay, you know what? I'll say something new. I think you have the space to be who you really want to be. I think that's the Nordics for me.
Beautiful.
Amazing. And I think this session, I want to grab on one thing that Amanda said, that these spontaneous meetups are those that actually create these lasting connections. And I'm super excited to meet all of you now in the near future and build those bridges that all of these sessions have been putting a possibility to. And I want to thank you all so much for the session now. I'm super inspired and I'm super excited to see what there is still to come. But now, unfortunately, we need to take a short break and then continue with our last session of the day, which will be about showing the Nordics in the world. And we will have the 13th-time Grammy winner Christian Rees joining together with one of the senior advisors from Nordic Innovation to talk about, for example, the Nordic Innovation Houses and the Nordic LA, that is a creative incubator in LA. So super exciting last session. A big thank you to all the speakers. A big thank you to Tarek for the energy and for moderating.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for the amazing panelists. Thank you, Ronnie. Happy.